I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Crystal T. Harrell. She is a #1 best-selling author, motivational speaker, and certified mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor. Her journey began in public housing in Alabama, which led to her earning a PhD in public health at Yale University, along with securing over $600,000 in scholarships, including the Gates Millennium Scholarship. I don't want to read too much about her bio because it gives a lot of her story away, and I think it's more beneficial if I have her share her story with her. So, um, thank you so much, Dr. Harrell, for coming on here. I cannot wait to hear your story, and I cannot wait to hear your um have this conversation with you.
Oh no, this is awesome. Thank you so much for having me and for even considering me as a guest. When I saw your profile picture with with Avi, I was like, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah, fun fact, me and her actually graduated from Auburn. So yeah, so we're both Auburn alums. I didn't know that until the other day. So we talked like for 10-15 minutes about Auburn and everything. So she's kind of the first Auburn alum I've had on the podcast, and it's rare to find an Auburn alum on here. So we're going to really click. Starting at the beginning, tell me a little bit about how childhood was like for you. It seems like you had a pretty traumatizing childhood, but just kind of start from the beginning about what childhood was like for you.
Yeah, so I love actually talking about my childhood, partly because even though it was very chaotic and even though so much happened during that time, and I'll definitely, share the deets, like share the details of it, but it was filled with a lot of love. So I'm one of 10. So my parents together had seven girls and three boys, and I'm the seventh born child out of those 10 children. So I came in, kind of at the tail end of everything. There was, already a lot happening by the time I was born. I was actually 9 months when my mom got pregnant with my little brother. So they were basically like we were back to back pretty much. So during that time, both my parents are ministers in the South. So I was born and raised in Alabama, which is where Auburn University is. And fun fact, Auburn had always been my dream. I just love the colors. It started off as like falling in love with the colors. And then once I visited campus, I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is the place. But I grew up in a very big family, rural Alabama, not much happening. Um, but because there were so many of us, there was always something happening in the household. So even though in our small town it wasn't a lot going on, like there was always something. And we always made up games. Like my dad was very active in our life. So he was always, taking us to the public library or taking us to the public pool, like basically finding all the free things to do around the neighborhood so that he could get us out the house and, like let us, I guess, like, use our energy or use up all our energy so we weren't, as crazy at home. But those were honestly the best times of my childhood, was just being around my dad. And both my parents were present, but my mom was a workaholic and she worked a lot, so I didn't get to see her as much. But my dad, he worked as a mechanic, so his hours weren't crazy, and he was usually home by the time that I was done with school. So I just remember him just always being there. And right about like 11 or so, I think I was 8 when he first got sick, and then I was 11 when he passed away. So that is when the chaos and the trauma started, because after my dad passed away, that was just my family moved around like 6 times, and it was very difficult to witness as a sensitive child. Like, I was very aware of life at a very young age. I was that child that was just always watching. And so I was very much aware of all the chaos that was going on, and with no way to really express what was happening, because we didn't talk about my dad's death in our household. It was kind of like this taboo subject. Like, everyone was just kind of pretending like it didn't happen, which was always strange to me as well. So it took a lot of time to process that in my adult years. But that was the hardest part. Was, I look at my childhood in two periods, which was before the death of my father, when it was kind of like, I guess, the golden years, and then after he passed away was when all the chaos and the trauma and everything. It took me 14 years to stop having panic attacks and to finally deal with that. I say deal with air quotes, but to finally process it, so to speak.
So tell me about this awakening that happened in 2018. You classified it as one of the darkest seasons of your life. What happened in
Yeah.
2018 that made you kind of change your life for the better?
Yeah, I love your questions too. I love the way you ask them. But 2018 was I guess, like the dark night of the soul type of, so to speak, because it was at a point in my life where I didn't want to be on Earth anymore. Like, I was 23 at the time, and I was finishing my first master's degree at Auburn in human development and family studies. And I was going through my first breakup. So I was like dumped and everything. And it was just so painful because this person had moved on, and I was just, left there picking up the pieces of, dealing with a broken heart. And I had, again, no one really to turn to. So I was journaling all the time, and I was going to therapy, but it just wasn't helping. And so one day, on this, random Tuesday morning, it was the summer of 2018, I remember waking up, and I had gray sheer curtains in my apartment, in my bedroom at that time. And I just remember waking up and thinking, like, I wish I didn't wake up. Like, I wish I had fallen asleep and just never woke up. And I remember watching that thought pass my mind. Like, I was watching the train at a train station, and I thought, what the heck? Like, how is it that I'm so aware of this thought? Then if I can see this thought, then that means that this thought is not me. Like, there's a deeper part of me that I'm just not aware of, that I'm not connected with, that I'm trying to figure out, like, how is it that I'm so aware of the thoughts that I'm having? I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of difficult to explain, but I just became aware there was some separation between who I was, the core me, the real me, and the level of thinking that I was in at the time, which was not a very good place to be in. And so from that day, I started to think about my inner child, the little kid before the trauma, before, everything happened with my dad, and really seeing the smile on my face, seeing how creative I was, seeing my dream of being an artist like Norman Rockwell at the time, who was my favorite artist, because I thought he created so much life in his art, and I just wanted to be able to do that with my art. I wanted to create life and to share that with other people. And I remember that inner child. And I thought that day, maybe there's an opportunity for me to reconnect with that part of me. And I didn't know it was possible, but I knew that I was going to try. And so that started this journey of self-discovery, or this spiritual journey, this self-healing journey, because I knew that I had to try, because I couldn't stay where I was, or I wasn't going to make it past that season of my life.
So after you had got your first master's at Auburn, what did you decide to do after that? At that point, did you kind of have a general idea of what you wanted to do for a career point, or was there kind of
Mhm.
more that you wanted to do with your career at that point?
I kind of knew what I wanted to do at that point, because while I was getting my master's at Auburn, I attended this guest lecture series. And it was a professor who was from Emory University in Atlanta, and he was giving a lecture on the effects of slavery on the decline of heart disease in the U.S. And he was basically able to map out 18, I think it was like an 1850 census of where the most concentration of enslaved persons were. And he was able to put that map, or I guess sync that map up with a map of the rates of heart disease decline in the US. So we know that heart disease is on a decline, but for some populations, especially like geographic locations, it's at a slower decline. And so he was able to see that where the highest concentrations of enslaved persons were the same spots where they had the slowest decline in heart disease. And I was just blown away. I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat during his talk, and I was taken aback by the fact that you could do this. Like, I was like, I didn't even know you could use history or historical data to inform health data like for today. Like it was just crazy to me how he was tying together the past and the present. And I knew, I was like, I don't know what, he was a social epidemiologist, or is a social epidemiologist. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what epidemiology is, but this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so at the time, Auburn didn't have a public health track. And so I ended up switching my major. But when I did that, I had to basically go to a new school and start over. So I ended up getting my second master's in epidemiology after transferring to George Washington in DC. And I
You know,
pretty
we
much finished that.
we had mentioned a little bit before we actually had recorded, we kind of had a conversation earlier about you did school for continuously for years and years to come. You went basically had done like 11, 12 years of school.
Mm.
Was that kind of a way for you to kind of escape from childhood trauma of kind of getting your mind focused on something else where you didn't have to really kind of look back at childhood a little bit?
Yes, I wish you could see my face. I'm literally shaking my head. Like, yes, definitely all of that. Because when I was growing up, my dad was my first educator, right? So, like, I was always connected with my dad, even after he passed away. Like, while he was alive, I was daddy's girl. Like, I was always around him, always, wherever he went, I was like following along because I just thought he was so interesting and so smart. And he was always reading. He had a personal library in his room with two big white bookshelves that he built that had books and books, and on the bottom two shelves were all of his vinyl. And so I was just like, this man knows everything. And so I was always questioning him, and he would teach me. He taught me how to read and write before I started preschool. So I was, very much like, education is the way to go, because every time he would teach me something, I felt like I was better, or I felt like I was more empowered, so to speak. And so when he passed away, I just kind of threw myself into that. It was the only way I could still feel that kind of connection. And also the only, like you said, like it was an escape for me. And so going through school, I had the scholarships, because if it wasn't for scholarships, I would not have been able to get a degree. Let's just be, clear on that. Like I needed some money to go to school because my
Right.
family couldn't afford it. And so I guess like getting the full ride 10-year scholarship really gave me the opportunity to pursue education full out. Like I felt like there were no limits for how far I could go. I didn't know grad school was a thing, or that I could even get a doctorate, until I connected with my advisor, who is still my mentor to this day. When I was at Auburn, I was taking his stats class and ended up doing well in it. And he asked me to teach it the next year. So I ended up becoming a statistics lecturer as an undergrad, which I was the first one in the department to ever teach stats as an undergraduate. So he really shaped my higher ed and kind of academic experience, because he saw me. He saw the level of love I had for education. He saw that I was willing to show up, and I never missed class. Like even when I was going through, all of my, mental health stuff that I was dealing with at Auburn, and I always showed up. I was always there. So he kind of just like nurtured me, and seeing how much he believed in me helped me go even further. So I never took breaks. I took classes in the summer. I wrote my dissertation in the winter and in the summer, and I taught in the summer. So I was in school nonstop, no breaks for 11 years total.
It's so you're so inspiring in that regard too, about how showing how much hard work can be, because some students can barely go to school for 2 years and they need a break. And so for you to be able to go 11, 12 years continuously of doing all this hard work while also battling things has been um, truly, truly inspirational.
Mm.
Since graduation, how has life been after school and now that you kind of have gotten to a professional career? How has life been for you since then?
Oh, it's been very difficult. It's been such a learning curve because when you're in higher ed, like you have a curriculum, like you have a schedule, you know when you're what you're supposed to do to help you get to the graduation date. Like everything is
Hmm.
laid out for you. But when you're navigating like life after college, it is a different ball game. Like you have to really have a level of trust in who you are, and that's something it was underdeveloped for me as a college student because I trusted more in the system than myself. And now that I'm out of school, I have to put more trust in myself and my gifts and, my God-given calling to show up and use my voice to now not only be a student, because I'll always be a student of life, but now I have to show up as a leader, as an educator, as someone who has gone down a journey, and I can use everything that I went through to help other students get through that. But there's no blueprint for that. Like no one has handed me a curriculum or handed me some, or any type of schedule to help me with that. So I've had to learn a lot by kind of just being in the midst of it. And that's been difficult because it's chaotic and it's not always easy. But I will say because going through college, I figured out that I can do hard things. It made it much easier now to go through this because I know that this won't break me. It's only one part of my journey. It's not the entire journey, if that makes sense.
In your unique journey, you seamlessly blended academic pursuits with spiritual exploration. Could you share with my listeners a little bit about how you've engaged or have managed to integrate these two seemingly distinct worlds into your work and research?
Yeah, so it seems like they're distinct, but I think they're very connected. The more that I do research, so during my doctoral program, I was doing research on a, a concept I guess it's kind of new. It was used before, but no one was really talking about it, but it's called spiritual consciousness. And it's essentially the awareness of our invisible connection to each other and all of life, right? It's the awareness, kind of like if you were looking at a fish, it's kind of like the fish being aware that it's in water. That would be the equivalent to us being spiritually conscious, is being aware that we're connected in this, what's known is, I think it's been called like a unified field of consciousness or a unified field of awareness. A lot of researchers like Dr. Bruce Lipton talk about it. Dr. Joe Dispenza, he does a lot of work with like heart, mind, and coherence and different things like this. And even heart math, they do a lot of research on just the electronic, or not electronic, but electromagnetic field around our hearts, this invisible field of connection. So it's been research in the scientific community, but not a lot of researchers talk about it. But I think that spirituality is the basis of who we are, because being spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that you're religious. Those two terms are actually defined differently in research. Um, but it helps you remember who you are at your core. I associate spirituality with the awareness of you, the awareness of who you are as a spiritual being having this human experience. And so everything that you do, whether in science or academics or whatever, route you take, is always going to be connected to who you are.
What's been some challenges and rewards that you've encountered while doing this integration?
This current integration,
Yeah.
hmm, I would say the biggest challenge has just been finding my voice. Like I mentioned before, like I'm so used to working within the confines of a system. And now that I'm not in said system right now, it makes it a little bit more challenging to know what you sound like. And so sometimes when I'm speaking, I just question like, am I sounding authentic? Like, does this sound like something that I would say? I would never say something like this in the past. Like, is this really who I am? So it's like you're kind of like a child almost, so to speak, when it comes to like hearing your own voice, kind of like hearing yourself on a tape recorder. You're just like, is that the way I sound? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like that type of phenomenon. That's been the biggest thing that I've been working on integrating. So that's been coming with a lot of like reading books by Dale Carnegie, doing a lot of research on communication because that's what your voice is a mechanism for communication. If you can't communicate what it is that you know or who you are, then I mean that's everything, the way you communicate in this world, both verbally and non-verbally. So that's where I am right now. That's been the biggest challenge, so to speak.
It's funny that you had mentioned that you kind of had trouble finding your voice because I think one of the biggest accomplishments that you've been able to have is have a TED Talk thing where you actually were able to actually go onto a TEDx stage and share this story. Tell me a
Mm,
little bit about how it felt kind of reaching a big platform because TED Talk is a really, schools use it all the time and even just
yeah,
influent is so influential. Tell me a
yeah.
little bit about how it felt having your voice finally heard on kind of a big stage.
Oh, I love this question, Noah, because it actually came up in another uh, talk or interview I was having with someone right before this, because I was telling her the same thing about finding my voice, and she was just like, "But you did a TED Talk and you wrote a book, like that's your voice." But the thing is, like when you're writing, like the TED Talk that you mentioned, I wanted to be a TEDx speaker for 10 years before that happened because I started watching TEDx talks in high school when I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for college. I had so much stacked against me. Like there were a lot of barriers that I had to overcome in order to get scholarship money. Even writing all those scholarship essays was a huge thing because we didn't have internet at home. So I had to be in the library every day when school was out, and the library was closed on Saturday or Sundays and Mondays. So that means those were 2 days I couldn't write really and work on my scholarship application. So I guess like the TED Talk or the TEDx was a dream come true because it had been something that I always imagined could happen for me. But when it happened, it felt so surreal because I wrote my speech, and writing to me has always been easier than speaking because I spend more time in my internal world than anything. Like I'm quiet, I'm a researcher, I can spend all day inside and it doesn't bother me. But speaking was totally different. So I wrote my talk and then I recite. I work with the coach to help me, refine it over time. But that wasn't like, I guess like a off on the whim type of like thing. Like it would have been totally different had someone set me on stage and was like, just talk for 12 minutes straight about anything or about your journey. Like that would be hard, which is what I'm doing now with you. But this is just one-on-one. The challenge is bringing this to more people. That's where I am, is how do I articulate this in front of more people when there are more eyes, or what. I hope that makes sense.
Do you see yourself hopefully having more opportunities to be able to speak on stages, or has it been kind of you've kind of done it, you don't know if you might want to do more in the future?
I would love to speak on bigger stages or even more stages, even if I got invited to do another TEDx talk or another, even a TED talk. Like that would be, oh, that would be a dream come true. But before that happens, or maybe in the process of that happening, I would have hoped to develop my voice to a point to where I know exactly like this is who I am, and this is what I have to say. And I hope this is making sense, but it's kind of like I guess it's a confidence thing, or more so like just a developmental piece of using your voice more. And so it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you don't feel as confident in it. So that was a big part of me doing more podcast interviews actually, and connecting with, hosts like you, was because I knew that if I was going to be on bigger stages, or if I was going to be on stage again in any capacity, then I had to use my voice. And I ran track at Auburn, and I remember we were always working out, but if I tried to go to a track meet without, going to practice, then I would have failed miserably. So this is kind of like me, being on the track every day and showing up and developing my voice over time for the meet whenever that happens, whenever the bigger stage opportunity comes.
For the future, what are some future goals that you would like to maybe achieve that you haven't had the opportunity or have had that moment to be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of related to, what we just discussed as far as like being on a stage where I know it's going to have an impact on a mass amount of people. One of the things I've always wanted to do was, build my company up to where it's able to generate profit and build it up to the point where it has the level of community impact that we know it could have, and then be invited to stages like Forbes or something like this where I get to talk about the process of building a company and all the highs and lows that comes with that, and everything that I'm speaking with you about now, finding your voice, how to deal with those difficult transitions in life, and how to really ground yourself in who you are. I want to share that with more people. And so that's one thing that I hope to do is get my career to a place to where I'm being invited to talk about, how it was to build you know, a huge company, or it doesn't even have to be huge, just a company that makes an impact in your community, a purpose-driven company.
And also this book that you've released, Crystal Clear, was this
Mm.
book easy for you to write?
Oh no, it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. It was harder than writing my dissertation.
Oh,
It was
really?
so, oh yeah, it was hard because it wasn't hard in the sense of like I didn't know how to write it. It was hard because it was the first time in my life where I actually sat down with my journey. Like from 14, I would say around like 12 or 13 is when I started really putting my attention on higher education. So like from that age to I was that was 2021. I don't even know how old I was, but that was, until 2021. Like that was that was years of me just going through the process and not really stopping. Like I was going very quickly in my life, and I really had tunnel vision. So to sit down and write crystal clear, like I had to be present with my journey. I had to sit with everything that had happened. And so some of the things that was coming up while I was writing were like I had to process it at that time. So it was like it was like a therapy session for me. But at the same time, it was like a big release because I could finally see my journey in one place, and I could finally say like, wow, like you survived some of the most difficult, challenging situations. So obviously there's something within you that needs to be shared. And so that's why it was difficult, is because I had to be present with all of that. And that was difficult.
Well, you're such a strong young woman. You know, you've got so
Thank you.
much
No.
in store for you. You know, people are going to listen to this, and there's people that have been in this similar situation where they just feel stuck. They don't know what to do, and
Yeah.
they feel like that everything that they're trying to go for is not going to come true.
Mm,
And I think you're one of the few people that can help change that mindset of
mm.
showing that, yes, I had a difficult childhood growing up. Yes, I went through some really dark times, but I was able to really focus on myself and my education to really get there, and it's finally starting to pay off. So, what advice do you
Mm.
have for people that are listening to this that might be stuck and they just feel like they don't have any more purpose of trying to keep fighting? What advice do you have for them?
Oh, this is such an amazing question, Noah. And first, I would like to thank you for even saying that and reflecting that back because um, I believe that there's just something so great within the human spirit. Like if you just look across populations and look across history, like we are so adaptable. Like there's so much that we can achieve just individually, but if you look at the collective level, like if you're listening to this, you survived the pandemic. Like that was that was hard for everybody. That was a global difficulty. That was a global challenge. And you're here now and you're listening to my voice and Noah's voice. And so I would say to anyone who's in that, phase of life who is really who feels stuck and feels like they're at a standstill in life, I would say that the greatest thing that you have during this point in time is your belief in yourself. Because if you lose that aspect of yourself, if you stop believing in the vision, then it dies. It dies with you, it dies um, in time. And so I think that some of the greatest things that were accomplished in life by people the people I've studied to help me get to where I am, they never stopped, even when it felt really, really tough and it looked very, 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 very difficult for them. Like they never stopped. And I think that your ability, and not just your ability, because you can keep going, but it's your willingness to keep going when things get tough, is what is going to help you get to the other side of this transition in your life, this point in your life where it seems so dark. You have to keep going. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel like you don't know how you're going to make it, but there has to be this small little glimmer of light that you focus on that is just like I can't stop. Like there's something else on the other side of this, and I just want to see what that is. So it's that level of, curiosity and tenacity that is built in the dark moments that will help you. And there's nothing that you can't achieve. There's nothing that you can't get through. I'm telling you, like I truly believe that there's nothing that can stop or break a human spirit um, that is willing and that is determined to rise.
If people would like to stay connected with you, and
Yeah.
if they have personal questions that they would like to directly ask you, where all can they find you? And also, feel free to also mention where they can, if people are interested in the book and would like to maybe read it and learn some more about you, feel free to share it where people can find the book, and just feel free to promote everything you got going on.
Yeah, so everything that I do, I keep it on this one, my personal website. So I try to have all my projects in one space. And that website is Crystal T Harrell. So it's T as in Tango, and .com. And so it's just my full name plus my middle initial. And you'll find everything on there, my books, everything that I have going on with a project I'm working on now is called the Student Wellbeing Project. So I've been working as a certified academic success coach since 2019, and I've been coaching students for the past 14 years. So I've been doing this for a while, like working with students and helping them not just succeed academically, but also emotionally and mentally, because it doesn't matter how good your grades are. If you're not doing okay, if you're not well, if you don't feel supported, then what's the point of it? So I've provide that support for students where we just meet monthly, and it's kind of like office hours where you can just come in and ask me anything, and we, hold a safe space for our students and help them overcome the challenges they're currently facing and develop a plan together. So I never tell students what to do. I let them tell me what it is, the vision they have for themselves, and then we develop a plan based off of that vision they have for themselves, because no one knows what it is that you want to accomplish better than you. Um, and so that's where you can find me on my website. You'll find my email there as well. And also my social links are in the top right-hand corner of my website if you want to connect on Instagram. I'm not so great on social media. I'm sorry, but I'm getting better.
Listen, I understand social media can be hectic and crazy at
Oh,
times,
it's so
so
much information. I just like, oh, it's so noisy. It's just always just a lot.
I've appreciated you so, so, so much for coming on here and
Oh,
sharing this story. It's so inspirational, and I think a lot of people are going to really resonate with it, and are going to feel really inspired. I
thank
will
you.
put all of her links in the description box below. I'll put the website down there, and as well as put her social media and some links for the book as well down there, so that if you're interested in checking any of those out, it's easy access for you. To keep updates about the podcast and everything, feel free to follow me on social media as well. Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And feel free to also follow the podcast wherever you get podcasts from. I'm on all of the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere. So feel free to subscribe to Lethal Venom on any of those platforms to get notified of when new episodes come out. Again, a huge thank you to all my listeners for tuning in to today's episode. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day and week. Stay safe, make good decisions, and I will see you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.